Hey, John. Are you finished with that project analysis report? I stopped by Jeremy's desk. He said you're still working on it.
Finishing it right now. It would have taken too long to get Jeremy up to speed on this project, so I decided to do it myself. I should have it ready for you in about the next hour.
Okay. But we just need it by close of business so that we can review it before the client meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow.
I know. It'll be ready, don't worry.
Hey, John, Mr. Fujiyama's on the line for the third time today. He said he really needs to talk to you. Can I forward him to Marie? She is the lead on his project.
No, Teresa, I really need to handle Mr. Fujiyama myself. It's a very important client. Tell him I'll call him back in 1 hour.
Okay.
Hey, John, you ready to go to lunch?
I don't have time for lunch today. I am too busy. I know we were going to discuss the meeting with the IBT group tomorrow, but...
It's okay. I already put talking points together. You want to see them?
No. Actually, I think you should use mine. I wrote these down in the Starbucks line. Use these. Sorry, I wasn't able to text them to you on the phone, but I was talking with a client.
Okay.
John.
Sorry, I was just resting my eyes. What time is it? Oh no, it can't be 3 already. What am I gonna do?
John, calm down. What's going on here?
Well, I was up late last night working on these projects, and I guess I just fell asleep. I can't believe this. I try as hard as I can, but I just can't seem to keep up. And I feel like I've only had about 2 hours sleep since I got promoted a month ago. Oh no, and I still have to call Mr. Fujiyama back.
John, come into my office and we'll discuss this further.
Well, no, really, I can explain everything, please. I mean, I know you hired me because I'm the guy that gets things done. I still am that guy. I just need some time.
Okay, take a deep breath and come into my office. We need to talk about delegation.
Whoops. All right. Thanks for letting me share that. I think that's every entrepreneur's Achilles heel is trying to do everything at once and not delegating and just taking on all the tasks yourself. I know I fall victim of that. And I think Sean, I'm going to introduce Sean here in a minute, our guest for today. But from the outside looking in and being involved in some of Sean's deals, I think he is pretty darn good at delegating and having team members to help him take stuff off your plate. So anyway, Sean, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. So this is exciting. I'll kind of read your bio and then we'll just jump right into it. So how do you, resonance? How do you say that?
That's it. Yeah.
Resonance. Okay. So Sean Steinman, founder and CEO of Resonance Ventures, a Salt Lake-based real estate development company, creating spaces that allow human beings to eat, live, work, and breathe. From industrial, multifamily, residential spec developments, and community-focused food and beverage operating companies, Resonance Ventures has a motto that resonates through them all, which is love your city. And I'm going to take this off here in a minute, but I wanted to rep my Love My City hat that Sean gave me a little bit ago to kind of show his swag and logo. So Sean started off his professional career within the music industry, where he got his first taste of entrepreneurship when he saw a gap within the music education that he knew he could fix. This prompted him to start Alpine Percussions and set up the design and development of a practice marimba and alignment in manufacturing to import products into the U.S. for white labeling within U.S.-based music companies. This company allowed him to start focusing on a bigger and better, which resulted in being courted to a local sustainable home builder, Garbett Homes, which kickstarted his real estate structure and business strategies with a keen desire to start Resonance Homes and Development, which was later absorbed by Resonance Ventures. So today, Sean is a visionary and eco-conscious urban developer. Second, the creation of a closed-loop ecosystem within his companies has allowed for an immense amount of growth that is encompassed within Resonance Ventures. in-house property management, which is Salt Flat Management, a brokerage team, real estate branch, Builder Solutions and Windermere Real Estate, construction management, design team, food and beverage operating company, Rooted Management Group, with community impact at the forefront of resident ventures. Sean has been involved in over 300 million in real estate projects, which has impacted positive growth within affordable for-sale housing, market rate multifamily, tilt-up industrial, residential infill, and currently holds over 103,000 square feet of assets. So awesome stuff, Sean. Maybe just briefly before I start drilling you with questions, anything that fill in the blanks there with that intro?
Yeah, no, I'm stoked to be able to spend some time with you, Matt. It's always a pleasure breaking bread or just kind of seeing face to face. But yeah, I feel very blessed. And a lot of it comes down to just being a part of the community and, looking at that fill of the gap is that love your city mantra and motto is so key to every single decision that I make. I think that's a huge factor for me. And I have a lot of cities that come to me and they understand the way that I underwrite things. They understand the way that I look at pro formas in a different way, just based on kind of people. And I think that pro forma or the people-based pro formas has been really where I have found an immense amount of success and being able to just jump into, really impactful projects and limiting my project scope kind of from that whole overall kind of feel. So yeah, so not much to really add on that side of things, other than I like the community. I'm a mentor for a couple groups down at UVU with their wrestling team and have a couple other kind of spaces that I do that in. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
That's awesome. So let's take it back to the beginning. I always love talking to people and people have given me feedback on these calls that it's inspiring to see where people come from, how they get to where they're at, because there's maybe a tip or trick someone can learn. And then just as kind of a reminder for me, but for everyone on the call or that might be watching on Facebook Live, one thing that I like to do these calls is for everyone to hopefully be inspired by something, whether it be an idea, a concept, a philosophy, a method, and just something that they can take from and then immediately put into action. So be thinking of that while we're on this call, everybody, that, the whole point of these is to add value. And I know Sean has enough experience with his deals to, that there's going to be something that somebody can take and act on right away to improve their business and their life. But so where'd you start? Just really quick, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And maybe kind of talk up through, your first love of music and right before you started at Garbett.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I actually started playing music early on in my life. That just was a part of my life. So, I was 7 years old when I started playing music. I'm a percussionist, which turned into a lot of professional opportunities. So in high school, I actually, as I was getting out of high school, I was playing in the jazz bands. I was doing all that kind of stuff. And then I had a scholarship to Concordia St. Paul up in Minnesota. At the time, I was dating my now wife, and she's like, you can't go to Concordia St. Paul up in Minnesota. And actually at that time I had a scholarship to go be a pastor, which was kind of, yeah. So, down the road, it's kind of an interesting situation, but, I've now officiated a few weddings and I continue my pastoral duties, I guess you could say. So ended up not doing that and then just going to school here and ended up kind of getting recruited into this music industry situation because I was playing, I was doing a lot of gigs, and I was studying business. So in that whole area, as I was working through this, I was recruited to start working with Andare Corporation to start this system with education to be able to kind of private label things and just kind of use my skills of talking to a lot of people and networking and just kind of building all that stuff up, and then going and teaching classes and clinics and all that jazz. So that was kind of a weird situation that then turned into me traveling across the world, trying to find different types of manufacturers to, start this importing company, which was Alpine Percussion, that was under Andare Corporation, that would then kind of sell and private label to a whole bunch of different groups. So
And that's crazy. So maybe just, this isn't the point of the call, but like, was it for students learning how to play instruments and music, or teaching them how to read it, or what?
So it had to do with just retention in the music education world. So I was going into anywhere from elementary schools to colleges, and I was teaching clinics, and I was just hearing all of the issues that teachers were having with retention and keeping kids in their program, keeping funding in place. And then I just put together tools for that to then, make sure that retention was in place.
Awesome.
So a ton of travel, and it's not conducive to, wanting to potentially have a family someday. And, ended up kind of getting into investing in real estate and all that kind of stuff at the time. And as I started doing that, I built my first investment property, which was a townhome, ended up living in that. And that was with Garbett. And then just started talking to them, and they started seeing like all these crazy things I was doing. And they're like, oh, geez, we just lost our marketing director. Can we have you come over here and start helping out? So started, chatting, and they started courting me. And I'm like, I have some big projects that are going on, and I don't know if I can really make that jump. And then I just was like, you know what? The projects, they're where they need to be. I ended up making the jump, and it was probably the best thing that I looked at, because I'm like, getting into this space, I want to make sure that if I do it, it has to be similar to the education aspect and the positive impact that I was making. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% about dollar signs. So that's where resonance came into play. So resonance is something that it is a energy that is not seen, but it's felt, just like music. You can't really see music, you can feel it. So as you go into my spaces, I want to make sure, like, of course you see it, but when you're working with a lot of the projects we have, I want to have it be felt. And that's the way that I like to treat with kind of the team aspect, and just every interaction that we have is going into that resonance. Any interaction that you have walking downtown, talking to a homeless person, or talking to someone that, is just lost. That's more so of kind of our trajectory. And if we could do that from a standpoint of what kind of businesses do we need to now make that impact, and what are the businesses that do need to have kind of their whole models flipped upside down. So that's kind of where we got into the Garbett side of things, and, developing and building from there. So
I love that. I actually didn't know what the tie into that word was. So that was helpful to kind of have that explained. So and I kind of sense it, you have a lot of philosophies or morals or whatever you want to call them that kind of guide what you do. And so this will kind of set the stage too, is give us, well, let me back up first. Probably was pretty helpful to work at Garbett for a little bit, to at least before you got out on your own feet, so to speak, to kind of watch and see how someone else is doing it while you're working for them. A lot of people are always looking like, how do I get my first start? Like sometimes your first start, it's not the worst place to, you and I share this in common. I worked for Ivory for a little bit as a sales agent, and then you were with Garbett. It's kind of helpful to see a bigger company kind of do their own thing from the outside looking in for a minute.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And to touch on that, when I got in there, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, big dollar signs, seeing some really unique acquisitions happening within Garbett. It was right at the time that they started getting into the multifamily world, which was super beneficial to me. So being able to see the acquisition strategies behind, the multifamily, large-scale multifamily, small-scale multifamily, for-sale products, eco-friendly projects and all that kind of stuff, it ended up being one of the best places for me. And I think Garbett's doing a great job. And for me, I was able to learn everything they were doing right and everything they were doing wrong. And, wrong is a very relative word, but wrong as far as kind of what makes more sense for me and,
Sure.
Way to create business and things that I would do differently. It's kind of like learning from your dad. Like, I want to learn something from my dad, or I want to not do certain things that my dad does. So that just allowed for me to come in, and, I had the networks already in the development realm just because I was already kind of chatting about all that stuff, and it just turned out really nice.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay. So you kind of had that experience. You obviously dabbled in entrepreneurship with the music stuff, and you're kind of getting this vision of where you want to head. So this will be kind of cool to talk about, is how that's developed over the time, maybe, iterations that you've done. And I loved your opening with the resonance as far as what that word means and what it means as far as how you're creating space in your deals and stuff like that. But love your city. Where did that come from? How does that play into your philosophy?
Yeah, so the love your city aspect, going back to resonance and going back to just the overall kind of feel when you're in a city, the first things that you kind of see in a city are the food and beverage spaces in a city. Well, of course, when you have the food and beverage spaces in a city, that means that there has to be employees that are working in those food and beverage spaces. And those employees have to also eat and drink, and those employees also have to live and have shelter as well. And one of the major things that I start seeing is every project, and this was when I kind of developed the residence homes and development side of things, but every project looks at numbers first, and that's a huge factor. But when I was a kid, I started seeing just these things. As I would drive downtown, I would see just these really unique opportunities, and I would see, pain in downtown Salt Lake. I would see abundance in downtown Salt Lake, and I would see just like the intermixing of that. Like when, places were shutting down, I started seeing a lot of that stuff. And if you put any type of energy, whether it be positive or negative energy, into anything, where focus goes, energy flows in that circumstance. So if you're focusing on making sure that when you are going into a project and you are putting a energy of love into that project, for whether it be the $7 an hour employee or the affordable housing project where you're like, hey, this is a 30% AMI project, which is really focusing on the almost Section 8 type of a situation.
Right.
Those people, they need love, and they need somebody from the top down to be loving on them as well as everybody in the space. So as you're going into downtown Salt Lake, you're partaking of what culture is, or if you're going into any of our communities, you're partaking of what culture is. And instead of saying, you know what, I'm afraid of that and that's different, or that's something that is disgusting, or that's a slumlord situation, it's more like, hey, what can we do to do something a little bit extra to ensure that we're loving those human beings that are those employees that are either a server or a bartender or somebody that is going into a unit, and they know that, hey, we want to make sure that we're looking at every aspect of tax credits, or doing a LIHTC deal to ensure that we are doing everything we can to maximize their experience in this world. So that's really where the Love Your City stuff came from. And I needed to figure out, Love Your City is kind of a great little mantra. And I needed to figure out how to make that more global as far as like my philanthropic aspects of ensuring that, hey, I've got the right tools and the right cogs in place to do that. So just a little kind of overview on that, but that's kind of where it all came from.
No, I love it. And then just not a detour completely, but everybody's doing different levels of deals, right? We got a lot of people that watch these calls and stuff that are maybe flipping, right? Some that are, even a couple steps behind there where they're looking to get into their first few deals or rentals or whatever, or some that are, like super successful, multifamily, owners or developers. But I like that mindset of taking care of not just the people you're working with, but also kind of loving your project and loving the building and loving the energy that you're going into it. I think back when I was remodeling my own house, I had a HVAC contractor, super awesome, very reliable and good price. He had done a lot of deals for me, but he's always just kind of really negative energy. And I remember being at my house one time with him, and he was just, cussing, and this is so frustrating. I'm like, Jim, his name's not Jim, but I'm like, Jim, I think it's time for you to leave, right? Like, this is going to be my house. I want good energy in here. I want people that are stoked to be in here working. I'm going to hopefully treat them right. And so there's something to that. I think, what you put into it, you'll get out of it. And not just as far as in the dollars, the design, all that kind of stuff, but just like you're saying, the energy that flows and the love that you're giving to it, if you want to call it love or whatever, right? Like, I think you see that on the back end, whether it is sales or whether it is an experience that someone is living in the house, right? How you design it, how you do whatever. I think that all kind of comes back full circle, and it's momentum swing that you can dial into. So I love where your head's at with that.
Yeah. And I know the exact same feeling. And that's why, a lot of times, every time I've ever gotten into like a luxury spec situation, I kind of feel like not icky, but like in a way, just not in my element, in the way of like, what is going to be the positive outcome from this other than just ego? So it's more of that situation. It's ego and dollar signs in that circumstance. And, you know, it's always started. It's like, you know, when you're getting into the brokerage side of things, you kind of brought some of that stuff up. It's like every deal, whether it be a $50,000 deal or up into, you know, a $25 million deal, all of those deals, there's going to be an amount of energy that you need to put into it. And that amount of energy, you know, requires a lot of hurdles and a lot of failures and a lot of successes that come out of that as well. But, you know, the $50,000 deals, there's a human being that's going to be living in that $50,000 deal.
Right.
Or that $25 million, there's going to be a whole bunch of human beings that are either living or working in that space. So if you treat each of them the exact same, that's when, you know, you just eliminate those zeros. And if you treat each of them the exact same, then it's like you now get over hurdles in a much different way. And, you know, it goes back to that, you know, where focus goes, energy flows. What are you focusing on, and what's the end result of what you're focusing on as well?
Well, and from a dollars and cents standpoint, when you do focus on that and provide good value to the people that are going to be occupying that space, it naturally converts into a more valuable project, a more valuable resale down the road, all of those things, right? So it's going to maintain its value, and also the locations that you're in. I know you're super focused on where you're doing deals and not only how you're doing deals, but okay. So you are involved in so many things, and we won't have the justice to, you know, to do all of these with the time that we have, but, you know, we'll kind of ease into little these. And so we're going to kind of hit on little small details of all of these. But I mean, I know you own at least one restaurant, you know, in Cottonwood Heights. We're going to talk about that. You have a big real estate team, do a lot of, you know, retail transactions. I know you're involved in adding a lot to your own personal portfolio as far as long-term holds. And then you're also involved in, you know, just different, whether you call them flips or not flips, or building and construction. So with all of that, kind of like with the video I shared at the first, as we talk about some of this stuff, maybe mix in a little bit about how you delegate and rely on other team members to do all of this stuff, right? Like if you're the guy in that initial video, like you've got to have, you know, 48 hours in a day to handle all of that, right? So it's a challenge we all have. And so hopefully you can add some insight into that. So, well, let's kind of just keep building with how you progressed. So when you left Garbett and started doing, what kind of deals came naturally to you? And then what kind of skills did you develop to ultimately get into some bigger, larger, more complex transactions?
Oh, absolutely. So when I was at Garbett, if you remember, being at Ivory, you have a lot of time of reflection or looking at wall.
Yeah.
You have like these ebbs and flows. So even beforehand, I mean, I would be traveling around the world and I would be spending, you know, time in airplanes or time in my car of just like deep reflection and creation. So in Garbett, I started, you know, seeing deals, and it's like, you know, checking emails, making phone calls, you know, going to meetings. And then all that extra time, which I would just say like truly for minute to minute, it was 80% of my time. I just had like wasted time. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I started stress testing business models. And in stress testing these business models, I just was like going in, analyzing stuff from Columbia, you know, business school and their MRED program there and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, breaking apart all of these different models and then seeing how we were doing them as well. And I was like seeing these two different models happening. And then I was seeing other models outside as well. And then I was putting them into play. So I would start, you know, buying personally at that point and looking at it from a small scale. So buying small little townhomes. And just seeing how that model can either level up or see appreciation compound and have that dedicated savings account. So I started kind of testing that, and then starting and, you know, basically working with the acquisition specialist to say, hey, I found this piece of land. What are your thoughts about it? Mm-hmm. And then put it in the hands of this, and then start listening to them of how they were doing it. So we started looking at some, you know, bigger scale projects. You know, up in the avenues, we were looking at some projects down off of the South Temple into, I mean, we were actively looking at projects that were like 10 years out at the time when I was there, which is like the Granite High School project, and like getting ready for these things.
Yeah.
I started seeing, like, from a bigger developer aspect, before RFPs are going into place, RFPs are pretty much going into place after they've identified people.
Right.
And identified a developer for that. So there's probably 2 to 3 years of work before an RFP truly gets identified and goes out to the public. So what I started realizing is, if I can focus when I get out of Garbett and I have enough cash to go and start buying small little pieces of land around all these areas that I'm starting to hear that RFPs will be in the next, let's just say next 6 months to 5 years, how can I now get onto that plate and start figuring out how can I add value to those communities? So I conveniently just got super focused on 13th East, 7th East, and 3rd East. And as I was going and figuring out things on, those 3 major veins of our city that we know, I started seeing patterns within those 3 major veins. And, those patterns also, go up into 20th East, 23rd East, and, even further. So as I started seeing these patterns, I started seeing these compression areas. And basically, and with those patterns, I started saying, all right, if I can now focus on if 23rd East to 20th East is having these type of metrics, but then 2 years later, those metrics are now corresponded to the next 3 blocks over, and then, start seeing all these additional patterns. Where are some of these areas that they haven't fully realized yet for us to now be able to really hone in, where I can buy something that is on a metric that is, 3 or 4 years behind, and I can buy it super low. And that started coming out to looking at like RMF 35 or even like commercial zoning, and saying, all right, if I get into a commercial zoning and there's certain RMF zonings, RMF 35, RMF 45, 75, RMUs, what are some of the things that are happening with this? Or what areas is there a master plan or an overlay that hasn't necessarily been released to the public in those 3 major veins for me to now? So, getting into the nitty gritty of that, what that resulted in is I went for smaller projects that, it was me and then trying to go and find a builder partner for it, with my builder network. And then realizing, okay, the first couple deals, I would just sell it off to my builder partner and, I would still close on it and then entitle it and, really just kind of paper entitle that thing and then sell it off. And then just continue to develop it from there, and then start doing full ground up projects in those 3 major veins. So that's what I see is those patterns that then equated to being able to buy in prices that are, old pricing, and then be able to create value from it.
No, that is super interesting. And it's another reminder for people that are watching, like, you could be an expert in analytics, and I want you to just maybe mention some of those metrics, but like that advanced planning and thinking of like where the growth is headed, like, man, that pays off big time. So that's super cool. And then as you're young and maybe not with the capital and the backing that you might have later on, how do you use your network to partner and, leverage other people's resources to kind of fit your vision? And I'm guessing you painted that picture for them pretty clearly. Like, these are the metrics, this is what's happening, this is where it's coming. And it's probably a lot easier to sell somebody on that, right? With kind of like a vision and a plan. But maybe just touch on what, like when you say metrics, like what kind of things are you talking about? What kind of metrics are you talking about?
Yeah. So I would take cost per land as one metric. So I would say, cost per square foot for just raw land. And then I would now start looking at cost per square foot for raw land or one with a home that I can do a higher and best use on that situation. And then I would start developing from there to then figure out and say, all right, if I now take a cost per square foot for land and then associate that with cost per square foot for rentals, whether that be residential rentals. And then when I started kind of developing into the industrial, I started getting into the industrial rentals and all that kind of stuff. But I started seeing those metrics and certain patterns within those metrics. So I would basically take a snapshot of 9th and 9th. And I would say 9th and 9th has, XYZ cost per square foot for land. And 9th and 9th has XYZ cost per square foot for commercial leasing, and then also for residential leasing. What makes 9th and 9th unique? So then I would start building in what makes 9th and 9th unique. And then I would say, all right, pre-9th and 9th, when it hit kind of their bubble in a way, now let's look at other areas that are on the same trajectory as like a 9th and 9th. And what areas do I want, which kind of rolls into some of my projects that I have right now, what areas do I want to have those similar metrics to 9th and 9th, 15th and 15th, the Holiday Boulevard RDA project, all of those types of projects, or even the Central Business District downtown. What are the fundamentals of those that make it a community and create a true sense of place to get those types of premiums for people to want to live, eat, drink, work out of those spaces? So
that's really cool. Yeah, that's thinking down the road a little bit, and then putting those puzzles in again. Well, let's just jump right into it. Like so maybe talk some specifics about some of those projects that maybe you're currently working on or already put to bed and moved on from, that were the fruits of that kind of analysis and thinking through. Like, I love that analogy of 9th and 9th. Like, what makes it awesome now? Well, okay, well, what was it like before? Where's the next project that might be similar to like what 9th and 9th might be like, and how do I get in there early and first?
Yeah. So, going into some of those projects, I mean, 13th East, there's probably 10 projects I have just on 13th East, anywhere from large scale apartment value add stuff that we did on 13th East to, medium scale townhome projects that we've done on 13th East, to land development projects that are ground up that we've done on 13th East. So anywhere from 10 units to 121 units on 13th East. Actually, I'm sorry, we did 4 units on 13th as well. So we just started focusing and just splattering that whole situation. And then we started getting calls from Mill Creek, before it was Mill Creek, to try to figure out, hey, what are some of these small hot pockets that we need to start focusing on? And they started picking my brain as far as, what would you want to see? Where would you want to see it? So we were, before Jeff Silvestrini became the mayor of Mill Creek, we ended up going and, sitting down. We kind of knew that he was going to be the mayor, and we talked to him and we're like, hey, what do you want the city to look like? And we started kind of plugging in the players. And some of those players, I plugged into Mill Creek just because it's way above, my scope or kind of my check writing abilities.
Right.
And then I, focus on some of the peripheral stuff to start focusing on those small little epicenters. So,
well, no, sorry, good finish. And then I'll ask you about a specific project that I know a little bit about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So in Mill Creek, I ended up back in, I think it was like 2015, we did a small land development play up there that then turned into about 24 units, actually just north of kind of the Mill Creek Wedge project there. And then we also had some of the commercial space around there as well that we just started picking up and either holding it or selling it. And of course, in those holds or sells, we've of course had 1031s that we needed to place and start working with. So we've been very, very robust and bullish on Mill Creek. We've done a lot in Salt Lake as well, and have been focusing a lot up into up into Park City, just on some unique little projects as well.
No, that's awesome. And one project that you guys did that I was maybe going to be involved with, and then at the last minute didn't, but I had some visibility to it from the start and the end for different reasons. But what a cool one you guys did on 13th East, right? Like about 30th South or something like that. That those like there'd been duplexes sitting there forever, right? And you guys made a cool play on those. Talk a little bit about that if you don't mind, because I think people will be fascinated by. People drove by that for years and years and years and years and years, and you guys changed the zoning, changed the use, and people are still living there, but in a different way, owning it instead of renting.
Yeah. So I started looking at all the, rental prices in what was happening after Element 31 started up, if you're familiar with that project.
Yep.
So Element 31 did some pretty unique things from a rental standpoint and getting some of those sugar house metrics to start heading south. So I started focusing in kind of that little epicenter there. So we had a project come across our plate that we're like, you know what, we've got some 1031 funds. Let's figure this out. And in Mill Creek, they didn't have any opportunity within their code to, and actually this is some secrets, guys, because we wrote the code, so hold tight on this. So there was nothing in the code to be able to do any subdivisions below 3.5 acres. And that includes condo conversions as well. So what we ended up doing is, you know, we found this property that was a great price per door from a replacement cost standpoint. So we found this project, and there was 10 units there, and our basis on it was, I believe our basis was about 160 a door. And these were 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, and you know, just great space. And there was other opportunities and upside opportunities outside of there. So we're in at 160 a door, and I knew, hey, you know what, we're probably to replace this size of a project. You know, each of those units were 12 to 1,300 square feet a piece. We're probably at about 200 to do a brand new project, and that doesn't even include your land basis on this.
Yeah.
So we started looking at it, and I'm like, well, we have an entitlement issue on this. So we went and sat down with the city attorneys and the planners and all that kind of stuff. And the city attorney said, why would we want a project like this in Mill Creek? And I'm like, well, where are you from, buddy?
Yeah.
I'm from Riverton. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, people that live here, you know, when their kids leave their house and they go and buy their house, they have to go buy in Harriman and Bluffdale and Riverton. And, you know, there's an affordability issue that you run into here because they can't afford, you know, a $500,000 or $600,000 house out here. So I'm like, we need to create affordable for sale housing in Mill Creek. And Jeff, the mayor of Mill Creek, was like, we need this. And all the planners said, we need this, we need this, we need this. So, you know, we got in a fun little pissing match just back and forth on affordability and all that kind of stuff. And he just said, you know what, whatever they say, we'll work through it. So it took us about 12 months to rewrite kind of an ordinance and some zoning code within there for special project. I think it's a special project code or something like that, to be able to actually create a project like this, to then take old dilapidated, you know, townhomes or, you know, nicer townhomes or apartment buildings that are not stacked, that are side by side. And for us to go and actually subdivide those, create a condo plat behind them, and then do a full renovation, bringing them up to, you know, an engineered code in a way. So that's what we ended up doing there. And we ended up selling, you know, each unit from an affordability standpoint. You know, affordability in Mill Creek is very relative, but we were selling each of our units off for anywhere from $280 to $300 per unit, and creating just a really solid little community that is affordable. You know, the next townhomes down are going for 450s to 500s. So being able to be in that FHA kind of guideline and be able to create affordability where somebody can put 3.5% down, and then we control the HOA. We make sure that the HOA is taking care of the properties, because that's one of the biggest issues that we have. So that one was a really, really fun project. Mill Creek loved having us do that type of a project, because they can now say, this is an affordable for sale project, and we have now the zoning code to be able to do this.
Oh, I love it. It turned out so cool. And not only did it work out financially for you guys, but it, like you said, it solved a problem of, you know, I mean, it's small incremental steps, but adding 10 affordable units in a very popular neighborhood, you know, goes a long way. So, dude, I think that's awesome. Oh man, you have so many deals and stuff that to stock the specifics on all of these is we are going to run out of time. So I know you're passionate about a lot of stuff. So I want to, you know, kind of, you know, the spotlight's on you, right? So I know there's been a ton of awesome things that hopefully people are learning, and people are probably going to be driving out around Mill Creek right now looking for condos that they could, you know, convert or whatever. But talk a little bit about your passion for, you kind of mentioned at the first, how like spaces and neighborhoods have, you know, basic human needs, shelter, food, interaction, community, stuff like that. So if anybody knows Bengal Boulevard, what is that, like 27th,
Yeah.
27th South, 27th East?
Yep.
You know, there's been an old diner that was, what was an Angel's Cafe. It used to be Cottonwood Cafe over the years. I mean, it's been there. It originally was a 7-Eleven, right? Like way back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Across the street is the bicycle shop. You know, you go down the road and you run right into the Cottonwood Heights Recreation Center. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, it's kind of sidetracking a little bit from your development and stuff, but it goes hand in hand with real estate and your overall vision of love your city and residents. But talk a little bit about Rooted and what that is and what you're doing there.
So actually, it doesn't really go too far away from my development aspect. Going back to creating these epicenters, we're very focused on acquisitions and kind of creating a value add for that neighborhood to transition it into more of like a 15th and 15th situation. So we needed to make sure that we control some of the lead anchors in that space and control some of the bigger, you know, real estate aspects of that space as well. So getting into that, you know, my true start, it wasn't the music industry of entrepreneurship. It is selling popsicles down at Falcon Park. I grew up right on Falcon Park. And when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, I got a wagon and, you know, sold popsicles, and I figured out margins from that. And I got a fresh values card to go and figure all that stuff out. So I've had a huge passion for food and beverage since I was 7. And there's not a better place that you can impact more employees or more people than the food and beverage space. So we started studying, you know, buying up, you know, different breweries or starting different breweries or different bars or all that kind of stuff. And that started turning into some really cool, robust, you know, real estate ventures for us. And for me, I wanted to just go in and make sure that, you know, anything that I go into that I want to make sure that I can control from A to Z, I want to make sure that we can prove this and create a solid foundation behind it, and then start doing the living component behind it. So Rooted Cafe, we wanted to go in and create, you know, good vegetarian options for the community, good healthy options, fun place to hang out. And actually conveniently, that same building, the day I met my wife back in high school, I went to that building with her best friend, carved my name in one of the tables there. So it has just a really, really deep kind of space in my heart. But, you know, for us, it's just a passion project that is turning into something that's much, much more than that. And we have some cool multifamily stuff that we're working on just right around there. We've got some other commercial spaces that we had kind of put into position, and then COVID hit. Now you have to kind of rewrite all of your pro formas and rewrite all of your kind of business models based on, you know, COVID. So that's something that is a big real estate venture for us. But in the meantime, it's a heck of a lot of fun to be able to, you know, feed people and feed the community and be able to support. We've got a little over 30 employees there, and we've been working towards supporting them in some of the hardest times in the food and beverage space right now. You know, and that's one of the most important factors there, is how can we make sure that we're, you know, keeping those guys alive and utilizing some of our other kind of functions to be able to keep them alive, as well as kind of the rest of our ventures as well. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I love it because it's, you know, right down the street from my house, and I don't need to get my coffee in the morning from my house. I can just go down there and, you know, and work from the table. So I'm similar to you. I like to go and find different places around the city to go and work from, and, you know, bring my laptop. So it's nice to have my own space to do that.
And, you know, after we started getting to know each other a little bit, I mean, it happened at least a couple of different times. I'm like, oh, hey, Sean, you come here too, you know? So we'd find ourselves at the same spot in the morning. But okay, I kind of hinted at it. I think will be beneficial to me if like in 5 minutes, if you can kind of talk about your best tips and tricks for delegating, right? Like you're managing or overseeing or a part of, whatever you want to call it, a lot of different projects, right? Like you've mentioned a few of them. And, you know, I mean, even for just one of those, a restaurant would probably be a full-time job. So what's your philosophy or your tips and tricks as far as delegating, you know, assistance, whatever you want to call it, like leveraging other people's resources, you know, towards the common goal? What can you comment there?
Yeah, that's something that I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly trying to figure out. And I think everybody is constantly trying to figure that out because we're always working with different types of humans. We're always working with different types of experiences. So from a delegation aspect, I kind of have my pillars, and my pillars have very focused either employees in those pillars or managers within those pillars. So for me, from a delegation aspect, I have my administrative assistant who she knows me better than I know me. Like I call her for passwords, and I mean, she probably hates that, and she's probably watching right now, but no, she's not, she's working.
Good.
So, I have her, and she's been with me now for 4.5 years. So she manages a lot. I mean, she is an angel for me. So she is kind of one of the major epicenters for it. And then what I also have is kind of a philosophy of, I want the humans to fail with us. So, failing upward and failing together. So unless they're not, so I want them to fail in the back end, hopefully. So that means stress testing every single thing that you do. That's stress testing an email that you send out, like poking a hole in an email that you send out. 2, also stress testing any type of offer that you're going to be writing, whether it be for myself or an investor or, any of our partners that we're working with on that. So creating a failure situation that then turns into successes and learning opportunities, and hopefully we don't fail on the outside too heavily. That's a big factor for me. So for us to be able to kind of work and cohesively work in that, I don't see straight lines in nature. So I wouldn't expect seeing straight lines in human beings or in kind of this whole venture here. So I like to make sure that we can fail quickly, get over those hurdles, and make sure that we're continuously just growing from every single failure and not letting those failures define them. Don't let those failures define the project, but observe those failures, get over them. And from a delegation aspect, that gives them a lot of autonomy, and it's actually been much more robust now that we're working via Zoom for the most part.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to micromanage. So I like to kind of put it out there and allow for them. It's kind of like, put it out there, let your dog off the leash, let the dog go find a rattlesnake. Hopefully you taught the dog to stay away from the rattlesnake, but if it does get bit, bring it back and, kind of nurture and teach. And I'm not trying to say that the employees are dogs or any of that kind of stuff, but it's more so I want them to have the experiences that I have had in certain ways and be able to, learn from the successes and learn from the failures and be able to grow from all of them. And I think that's where the growth trajectory is really key.
Well, was that intuitive and natural for you, or was that hard? Like I found for me, it's just, I can't sometimes get out of my own way. It's like, no, I'll just do it. It's like I do it better. Right. Like, but that's totally not true. Like there's probably a couple things that I can do better, but really the most part, someone else is going to be better at than I am. Was that hard? Maybe it's an ego thing or whatever, but was that hard for you to let some of that go? Or was that just pretty natural for you to trust in others and help, nurture them and develop them like you talked about?
It was pretty hard. Because I mean, of course my way is the best way. And, we end up working, 24 hours in a day. So for me, it comes down to like, I need to be able to do all of those jobs and do them well and be able to teach those jobs. So if I can figure that out first, so, I can't let my ego say, I'm not willing to do something. So I need to figure it out. And then if I can figure it out, then I need to be able to teach it. And then I need to be able to continue touching on it. So it was kind of scary because I was like refining a ton of stuff. And I'm like, all right, I'll let you guys focus on this. It's not as crucial. And then I became too big of a bottleneck. And I kind of came to the realization like, all right, let's just be more abundancy mindseted in this. Like I have to understand, like you will fail. You need to understand that you fail. If you fail, we get back up. If you get back up, you'll fail again. And then hopefully it's not going to be as hard of a fall. So it's been hard. Like that is one of the hardest parts. And that's a daily situation. And right now I'm kind of in the point where I'm trying to replace myself in as many of the positions as I can. And that's where it gets a little scary, but doing that has been just really really good, and I've really enjoyed it.
Well, that's what I am focusing on this year and next year, is replacing myself, having other people help in a positive way, and partnering in different ways. So, man, once you get that completely figured out, which it sounds like you're really on your road to it, like, yeah, you're going to sell some serious courses on that thing. That's a hard thing to do. So props for how far you've come.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Always
Okay.
learn.
Yeah, always learn. Okay, cool. We are flying through this, which is awesome. I've learned so much. So let's maybe kind of end here with what are you most excited about going forward? Like where if you're talking about, as you use the metrics and stuff to kind of pinpoint, on 3rd East, on 7th, and on 13th, kind of where those next nodes are, and you probably self-analyze yourself a little bit like that and go, okay, where was Sean 4 years ago? Where am I at today? And then, like, where do you see, what's your vision for maybe your projects and your life? I always kind of like to end on that. Like, where do you see yourself headed, and what opportunities are out there that you're chasing?
Yeah, and I hope you hold me accountable to this, Matt.
This is recorded, bro. You're going to be, yeah.
Is embedded in the universe.
That's right.
Yeah. So right now, just with that overall focus, I've been putting a huge amount of focus in industrial holds, which require a lot of bandwidth and a lot of brain power. But at the end of the day, it's 4 walls, which I really like. There's a lot less complexity that goes into it. So I'm continuing to focus on building just a solid platform behind kind of industrial holdings and industrial development, but then being extremely selective of all of my other projects outside of that. So basically turning that all on autopilot, and then being able to then focus very heavily on really cool, either affordable projects that take a hell of a lot of, bandwidth and brain power and all of that kind of stuff, where you're getting the brain damage from those things when you're going into a LIHTC deal or going into any type of affordable tax credits. It's pretty extensive. So I want to make those in a different way, and focus on those in a different way, while still kind of creating the foundation, and then focus on some really cool key passion projects. So the Rooted side of things is a really key passion project. We've got some hospitality stuff that's coming out that's going to be really cool. And then some other really nice little affordability side of things. So really just kind of doing what we're doing right now, and being much, much more intentional on the deals that we say no to and the deals that we say yes to. And I think that's one of the key components of what we want to look at. So that's kind of a vague way of saying it, but really doing what we're doing now, but just much better than we are, and putting it more on an autopilot standpoint, and being able to benefit kind of with our expertise to be able to just build and grow those areas, and be laser focused on those impact passion projects immensely. So
I love it. And I know in the meantime, you are really efficient and quick on the bread and butter, quick hitter, burr properties that everyone knows about. And so in the meantime, while doing all these, longer term projects, or ones that require a little bit more nurturing, I mean, I've definitely had a front seat on seeing you, quickly take advantage of opportunistic stuff in the key areas that you want to, even smaller stuff like triplexes, duplexes, projects, to quickly take those down and burr them. And I know solid financing partners, long-term portfolio loans, all that stuff, which we could talk about another day. Like, you're involved in gaining skills and capabilities and all of that, which I think is awesome. And then I noticed yesterday, you guys are active in, charity projects and stuff like that. So, which is all cool and part of your whole, like you said, ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only way that we're able to do that is having a strong program of, 30-day money, is, as I would call it, 30-day money, 6-month, planning, 12-month planning, 3-year planning, 5-year planning. So I try to, keep my team really focused on that 30 and 6-month money, while I'm very, very focused on, the 12-month to 5-year projects. And I think, that allows for us to, be able to spend time doing, this last couple of weeks, we've probably spent, 20 hours volunteering. And that's a pretty cool place to be, where we can kind of, do that. And then they know when time to hustle is. So it's, it's because we're always looking out to that 12 months to 5 years.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a pleasure. And I know you and I conversate and talk a little bit offline. So hopefully people that have seen this can get a glimpse into, a different way of doing different things. And most importantly, starting what you do with a purpose and a goal and a mantra or a mindset, and letting that kind of ride your decisions and your vision for the different, money-making opportunities that are out there. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to reach out to you, are you okay sharing different contact information or?
Yeah, absolutely. So just put it down here in the chat.
Yeah, if you're good with that, let's do it. And then we'll wish everyone an awesome day and hit it up here another time. So Sean's going to throw his number. Did you throw it in or you want me to do it?
I'll do number as well.
I know on Facebook, and I'll share it with them privately, separate your info as well. Someone else will also ask for your contact info. So
perfect.
I didn't see it hit send yet. Did you get that in there? There we go.
Looks like it was private. Let's see. Let me see if I can do it to everyone. And Matt, thank you so much. This is fun. I always have fun hanging out with you, and hopefully we can do more of these. And when we sell that course on efficiency, I'll let you be the salesman for that. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'll be your first sign up, man. I can't get out of my own way half the time. So, but that's just how it goes. All right. Okay. There's his email in there. Everyone reach out to Sean if you have any questions. Sean, thanks so much. Have a great rest of the week, and everyone else, we'll see you offline and back at it, in the next coming weeks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.